In this video we'll be looking at the most evil personalities in both the Quran and the Bible. Iblis. Despite his status as an enemy of God, Iblis has a prominent role in many Islamic tales and stories. The Quran mentions that Iblis will be given respite from punishment until Judgment Day. On this day, he will be cast into hellfire and suffer unending torment. Overall, Iblis is one of the most feared and reviled personalities in both the Quran and Bible. While he is an enemy of God, he is still respected as a powerful being that can cause great harm to those who stray away from righteousness. It is important to remember his power and stay true to God's path if you want to avoid falling under his influence. In Islam, Satan, is known as Iblis' counterpart. One notable incident involving Shaitan is the time when he tricked Prophet Adam into believing that eating from a forbidden tree would not lead to death. Pharaoh. One of the most infamous evil personalities mentioned in both the Quran and the Bible is Pharaoh. In the Bible, Pharaoh is seen as a symbol of oppression and slavery, as he enslaved the Hebrews and refused to let them go. He also disregarded the warnings of Moses, resulting in a series of plagues and ultimately leading to his downfall. In the Quran, Pharaoh is seen as even more malevolent, with some surahs describing him as having a heart harder than stone. He was accused of arrogance, cruelty, and tyranny, and it is said that God destroyed him for his sins. Nimrod. In the Bible, Nimrod is described as a mighty hunter before the Lord. In addition to being a great hunter, he also had power and authority over many cities and nations. Nimrod's kingdom was large and powerful, and he sought to build a great tower at Babel, which would make him even more powerful. However, God was displeased with Nimrod's ambitions and scattered his people, leading to the confusion of language that we see in the world today. In the Quran, Nimrod is called Namrud, and is condemned for his arrogant attempts to challenge God's authority. Today, Nimrod's legacy serves as a warning of what can happen when human pride and ambition take over. Haman. One of the most infamous evil personalities in both the Quran and Bible is Haman, a wicked vizier in the Persian court. In the Quran, he is depicted as a particularly arrogant figure who plotted to destroy the Jews. In the Bible, Haman is portrayed as an ambitious man who schemes to have all the Jews in the kingdom killed. In both books, Haman is eventually foiled by God's intervention. The story of his downfall is well known throughout the Islamic and Christian traditions. In the Quran, Haman is cast down into the fire, while in the Bible he is hanged on the gallows that he built for Mordecai. Regardless of the details of his fate, Haman remains one of the most iconic figures of evil in both religious texts. His ambition and pride is a warning to us all to be mindful of our own pride and ambition lest we suffer a similar fate. Judas Iscariot. The story of Judas in the Bible is found in the New Testament Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. According to the texts, Judas was one of Jesus' 12 disciples, chosen by him to help spread his message of salvation and love. Unfortunately, Judas ended up betraying Jesus and leading him to his eventual crucifixion by handing him over to the authorities. This act of betrayal was seen by many as an unforgivable sin, and Judas became synonymous with treachery. In the Quran, Judas is mentioned as well. It is stated that Allah had cursed him for his act of betrayal and that Judas would be punished for his actions. His eternal punishment was that he would forever live with the shame of having betrayed Jesus. As such, Judas serves as a warning in both the Bible and Quran about the consequences of betraying one's faith. Although Judas is often remembered for his dark deeds, he has also been seen as a figure of redemption for some. For example, in some Islamic traditions, Judas is seen as a repentant soul who was able to make amends for his betrayal and ultimately receive God's forgiveness. Despite this, However, Judas will always remain one of the most notorious and evil personalities in the Quran and Bible. King Ahab. The prophet Elijah pronounced God's judgment upon Ahab for his wickedness and condemned him for his actions. According to the Bible, Ahab's punishment for his sins was to be killed in battle by King Hazael of Aram, and his son Jehoram would succeed him as king of Israel. In Islamic sources, Ahab is remembered as a tyrant and oppressor who was punished by Allah with a humiliating death in battle. He was succeeded by his son Ahaziah, who died 2 years later from wounds suffered at Ramoth Gilead, 2 Kings 8:26. Upon his accession, he again started following the ways of Jeroboam I, where he established Dan and Beersheba as centers of worship. It was during this time that Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel than all the kings who were before him. His most evil act was marrying Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, king of Tyre and Sidon. She brought Baal worship into Israel, thereby seducing both her husband and people away from Yahweh. However, she met her fate when she went against Yahweh's will by persecuting Eliah, 1 Kings 18:4-40. King Herod. In the Quran, King Herod is referred to as Herod the Tyrant, and is remembered for his reign of terror and violence. He is described as one of the unbelievers who refused to believe in God and persecuted those who did. He is also mentioned as one of the enemies of Moses and the Israelites in their journey to freedom. In the Bible, Herod is mentioned many times as a man of great power but also great evil. He is seen as a dangerous ruler who sought to use his power to keep people oppressed and under his control. His massacre of the innocents is described in Matthew 2:16-18, and his death is recorded in Acts 12:20-23. Herod was afraid that he would lose his throne, so he executed every person from infancy up to 2 years old in Bethlehem, because he thought that Jesus would try to take over the throne from him. Matthew 2:1-18. Sennacherib. When it comes to evil personalities in the Quran and the Bible, one name stands out above all the rest: Sennacherib. Sennacherib was the Assyrian king of Nineveh who tried to destroy the kingdom of Judah and subjugate the Jewish people. He was a cruel and ruthless leader who had no mercy for his enemies and sought to quash any opposition to his rule. In the Bible, Sennacherib is best known for the siege of Jerusalem, when he surrounded the city with a massive army and threatened to destroy it. In desperation, King Hezekiah prayed to God for help, and God answered with a miraculous display of power that saw 185,000 Assyrian soldiers killed in a single night by an angel of the Lord. After this event, Sennacherib retreated back to Nineveh, where he was soon assassinated by his own sons. In the Quran, Sennacherib is seen as an example of one of the most wicked people ever to live. He is depicted as a tyrannical ruler who believed himself to be untouchable and sought to enslave the Jews. He is described as having committed horrible acts against innocent people, including burning people alive and destroying cities. In response to his atrocities, God sent a plague upon his army that forced him to retreat. Antiochus IV. One of the most notorious evil personalities in both the Quran and the Bible is Antiochus IV. He was an ambitious and ruthless ruler of the Seleucid Empire, who sought to establish Hellenistic culture over the Jewish population. He is remembered for his brutal suppression of the Jews and his attempt to abolish the Jewish religion. In the Quran, Antiochus IV is known as Nimrod and is described as a tyrant who oppressed the people of God. The Quran says he was a powerful king who tried to force the Jews to abandon their faith and accept Hellenistic worship. He forced them to worship idols and destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. In the Bible, Antiochus IV is mentioned in the book of Daniel and is known as the Abomination of Desolation. He forbid Jewish customs, ordered that their places of worship be defiled, and even attempted to sacrifice a pig on the altar of the temple. He also attempted to force Jews to take part in pagan rituals. The story of Antiochus IV serves as a warning to those who would try to oppress others. For this reason, Antiochus IV remains one of the most evil personalities in both religious texts.